Hey friends, welcome back. Here we are. Let me shut off that annoying metronome because no one wants to listen to that. I was about to start recording the podcast, but I ran downstairs because this morning when we woke up, there was a newborn fawn on our next door neighbor's lawn. I don't know if it was born overnight, but it wasn't there last night. So they could have moved from another location, but this fawn was born could have been born last night within the last day or so. And the mom just came back. So if you don't know, you live in New Jersey, which has like an insane deer population. It's normal for the mom to leave the baby alone. And you don't go near it, you don't touch it for obvious reasons, but the most important reason being that if you were to go near it, it can pick up your scent and then the mom will reject it. I've learned that newborn fawns actually don't have a scent, which is like actually an evolutionary mechanism that makes them much harder to find for predators. It's actually protectionary, which is so cool. Anyway, so I saw her at 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning, and it's 1:45 and the mom just came back. And so she was standing up and the mom was cleaning her and she was eating, and then they walked, and it's amazing to watch this little tiny baby animal walk, and the legs are kind of like crooked, and I don't know where they're going to go. I hope they stay in this area because it's nice and safe in someone's backyard. But anyway, it's just so cool. It's just just amazing. Just what a lovely, special thing to get to see. Because this sweet baby animal and seeing the mom take care of it and just watching that instinctual connection that is wired into the DNA of a mother. And as an animal, it's obviously very different than a human because their brains function totally differently and they engage with the world differently. But it's just amazing to watch. So anyway, off topic, but I had to share. So, and it's weird, I'm actually recording this on a Friday, which I literally never do. I'm doing it because I normally record on Mondays, but Monday I'm going to be going to the city for my eyebrow appointment, which you guys know my beloved eyebrows that I get done with an amazing makeup artist every 6 weeks, and it's just going to be a kind of a crazy day. So I'm like, you know what? I've got plenty of time on Friday. Let's do it. So I want to talk about GLP1s today, guys. I have only talked about GLP1s, I know, twice. I did an episode in the fall with a current client who's been on a GLP1 now for, it's going to be 18 months. She's on Zepbound. And it was an interview, a conversation with her. If you haven't listened, it's awesome. I'll link it in the show notes. And then I did an episode several years ago about GLP1s that I actually haven't listened back to. I'm hopeful that my POV will have evolved since then, because if it hasn't in the last couple of years, it doesn't necessarily say a whole lot about me as a coach. I'm kind of the mind that, not that we need to keep evolving and changing our mind for the sake of doing it, but that we always need to be thinking critically. And just because we had one point of view or one opinion or, one experience based on information or research or whatever it is at the time doesn't mean that can't change. And I think that those are the only 2 episodes I've done. Honestly, because it's just a loaded topic and I've been afraid to talk about it. And what I'm going to do today, and I'm going to do this over multiple episodes, not necessarily in a row. This is not going to be a one and done, because GLP-1s are now such a mainstream part of our lives, not even of our healthcare, just our healthcare, but of culture, of pop culture, of society, of media, of wellness, of everything. That it's gotten to the point where I need to get over my fear of saying the wrong thing or alienating someone, and I just need to talk. And if you get offended or you don't like what I say, it's going to happen, right? I'm not doing it on purpose. And really, something I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should or should be on a GLP-1, because a GLP-1 is a medication and it gets prescribed by a doctor. And only your doctor can tell you and advise you whether or not it makes sense for you. That is outside my scope as a coach. And so what I will say, and I will do a little bit of a sidebar on this, is it is from a cultural standpoint and also from a healthcare standpoint, fascinating to me that you can get GLP-1s without seeing a doctor, without connecting to a doctor. You can go into a Medi-Spa clinic or a cryotherapy or a Botox place, and they have doctors on staff who will write prescriptions. You can get them online. You can access them so easily without ever Yes, a doctor has to write a prescription for you, but that doctor doesn't have to know anything about you. Whatever medical history they have is going to be minimal. And you can basically get a GLP-1 if you want one. You don't have to like go through the process of being seen and evaluated by a doctor. If you want one, you can get one. And I want you to think about what other medications can you think of where that exists? I'm not talking over the counter where you can go to Walgreens. If you feel depressed, can you go and get Prozac? If you're concerned that your thyroid is off, can you go and get Synthroid? If you're worried about your high blood pressure, can you get high blood pressure medication? No, you can do none of those things. But you can go get a GLP-1 to lose weight if you feel like losing 10 pounds or more. And those are facts, right? And I think it's something that we need to be aware of and notice, because there are cultural and sociological implications to that. And what does that mean? What does that mean that we can get this medication, but not other medications, and why? Because it's about weight loss. That's why. And that's why there's cultural implications. Because it's about weight loss, that's why the access to it is so uncontrolled, basically. And that there are these compounded versions, right? So if you don't know, when you hear Zepbound or Ozempic or Mounjaro, those are the medications that are made by the pharmaceutical companies. Zepbound is made by Eli Lilly. And Ozempic and Wegovy are actually the same drug. One is approved for type 2 diabetes. One is approved for weight loss. They're the exact same thing. Mounjaro and Zepbound are the exact same drug. Mounjaro is approved for type 2 diabetes. Zepbound is approved for weight loss, FDA approved. They're the same exact drug. They just have different names because they're approved for different uses. Many of the people that you know, if you have not gotten these meds like from your GP, and ideally you're getting them from your endocrinologist or an obesity medicine specialist or someone who's really an expert in these medications and how they work, but I digress, that's separate. If you are not getting them from your physician and you're getting them online or you're getting them through a local clinic, if you're getting them through MIDI Health or that brand like hers, whatever it's called, you are 95% getting a compounded version. And in case you don't know, a compounded version is not made by a pharmaceutical company. It's made by a pharmacy, and it is not FDA approved. You don't know what's in it. You have no way to know if it is the appropriate strength, if the way that they are mixing, because basically someone is mixing it in a pharmacy, if it is mixed at the appropriate amounts, at the appropriate doses, there is no quality control. Whereas when you have a drug that's manufactured by a pharmaceutical company, it has to go through rigorous inspection and testing, obviously, in order to be sold on an open market. I won't even get into the whole like peptides, not even GLP-1 peptides, like all the other peptides people are taking, which are there's nothing that's FDA approved, right? That's all unregulated. That's all coming from international locations. There's no regulation, no quality control. You don't know what you're injecting into your body. But in terms of the GLP-1s, right, compounded versus the prescription, huge difference. And I know lots of people who have taken compounded versions who've had a loss of efficacy, side effects, because they're cheaper, right? So if you're paying $150 a month for a GLP-1, you have a compounded version. Basically, if you're paying, unless you have insurance coverage, which I feel like fewer and fewer people do, if you're paying anything less than $400 a month, you definitely have a compounded version. And you need to know that. You need to be informed about what you're putting in your body, so that you can be monitoring it and you know how you're taking care of yourself. So I just wanted to kind of share some of that up front because I think there are so many implications to that, right? The accessibility, the pervasiveness, and the availability of these drugs is, I don't know that it's factually unprecedented, but it feels unprecedented. And I don't think either you or I can think of another medication that you can get on the open market in the way that you can get GLP-1s, right? I have had so many clients I've worked with over the years who at different points have struggled with mental health and have wanted to explore medication to support that. but either have been in between GPs or their GP didn't feel comfortable and wanted to send them to a psychiatrist, like whatever it is, couldn't get the meds they needed for their mental health. And yet you want to lose weight, you can just walk down the street to like your local Botox place and get a prescription for a compounded GLP-1. Boom, done. That is fascinating and far-reaching, has very far-reaching effects, which I'm actually not going to talk about today. I will talk about in another episode, because here's what I wanted to talk about today, in addition to what I just started to talk about. Again, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should or shouldn't be on a GLP-1. That is for a doctor, a well-educated doctor who understands how these medications work, to decide if that makes sense for you. And I think we are so far past the point of, yes, these medications originally were developed to treat type 2 diabetes. Then they found they really helped people who struggled with obesity. From a quote unquote, like on-label standpoint, meaning what's FDA approved, it's for certain BMI and waist circumference, like especially if you're trying to get insurance coverage. But you and I know everybody and their mother is taking it to lose 10 pounds, right? The ship has sailed on that. I may or may not share my thoughts on that. I'm not sharing them today. But again, like it's not, if a client came to me and was like, what do you think, should I be on a GLP-1? I would literally say like, you need to talk about it with your doctor. And then once you have that information, you're trying to make a decision. Okay, maybe you and I can like walk through what that looks like. But it is outside the area of my expertise to tell someone whether or not they should be on a prescription medication. I would never tell you that you're supposed to be on a blood pressure medication or a thyroid medication or like a beta blocker or, or an antidepressant. I would never do that because I don't have that training. I don't have that experience. And I say that because if you are getting these meds without that guidance and support and expertise, there's a gap in the process there, right? There's a systemic gap in the process because of how obsessed and consumed our society and our culture is with weight loss. So what I want, again, I'm like beating around the bush here, and I think I feel like, not that this is a caveat, I think GLP-1s are amazing. Again, I've worked with many clients. We have worked concurrently. They're in coaching and they're on a GLP-1. It's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So this is not like, I'm anti-GLP-1s or the shit about like, it's lazy. It's the easy way out. They're not trying hard enough. That's all bullshit, right? Like obesity is a disease. And it is a chronic disease. And so people who have obesity, who are using these meds to lose weight and improve their health, amazing, fucking amazing. And likely, because it's a chronic disease, they will likely need to be on these medications for the rest of their lives. Something that is very concerning to me, wasn't planning to talk about it today, again, see there's so many topics of like conversation here, are people who are using GLP-1s to lose 5 to 15 pounds of weight, primarily for aesthetic purposes. Some of those people probably are getting Zepbound, because there are absolutely there are physicians. I've heard clients, I've heard people tell me stories of physicians who are like, yeah, you want to be on Zepbound? Sure, I'll write your prescription. You want to lose 10 pounds? No problem. That's happening all over the place. But there's also lots of people who either don't want to pay for the Zepbound, like the name brand version, so they get a compounded version, and they lose the weight, but then it's like, well, I don't really want to stay on this like for the rest of my life, or I can't afford to stay on this. And then what happens is when you go off, the weight comes back on. The clinical trials show that only 10 to 15% of people who go off of the meds do not regain the weight. Now that is in people who have obesity, right? People who are using it to lose smaller amounts of weight. There is no clinical data because they are outside the scope of people for whom these drugs were clinically intended for. There's no research on people who are using them to lose 10 to 15 pounds and what the implications of that are. Does your body actually need to lose those 10 to 15 pounds? When you're losing that weight, how and what and why are you eating? How are you exercising? So what's your body fat to muscle mass ratio that's coming off here, right? It's whenever you lose weight, you're going to lose fat and muscle. And all the clinical trials have shown for people with obesity that there's not a dangerous amount of muscle loss. There's like a lot of fear mongering out there around that. But for people in smaller bodies who are losing very small amounts of weight for aesthetic purposes, we have no information about that, right? And so are you strength training? Are you eating protein? What is your relationship with food? Are you using these drugs just to eat less? And when they stop making you hungry, are you like, oh my God, this is amazing. How little can I eat? Because that's a real thing. I'm going to do a separate episode. There are so many articles out there right now about women for whom GLP-1s have either resuscitated old eating disorders or created new ones. And rewinding back to what I was saying a couple of minutes ago, for people who are taking them to lose small amounts of weight for aesthetic purposes and then go off for various reasons and they regain some or all of that weight or have to eat in a very extreme way to maintain the weight loss, the implications for that are unspeakably huge, and we haven't seen it yet. And my prediction, and I've been saying this for several years, and I think it's already starting to show itself, and it will continue to show itself over the next 5+ years, is that there's going to be a whole new epidemic of disordered eating as a result of these drugs being misused because of the availability, because of, how just commonplace they've become. So many different factors are going to impact that. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be really negatively impacted. And that's not me saying I'm anti these drugs. That's not it at all, right? Some of these things are outside of our control, right? It's become like an entity unto itself. And they are transforming healthcare. And the benefits that researchers are starting to see beyond weight loss, I think it's going to be amazing. What are we going to see in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And there are now stronger versions of these drugs in the works that are like a year out from FDA approval. The next one is called retatrutide. And it's like a more powerful Zepbound. And it's showing increased weight loss for people who have obesity. Then there are future versions that are actually looking at or have the capacity to actually impact your metabolism. Current GLP-1s do not change your metabolism. Contrary to popular belief, that's not how they work. They literally work by decreasing your appetite and you eat less food. And you lose weight because you're eating less food. You lose weight because you're intaking less calories. That's all that's happening. And you'd be like, no, it's speeding up my metabolism. No, it's not speeding up your metabolism. That's not how the science works. You're losing weight because you're eating less because it drastically changes your appetite. So when you go off of them and your appetite goes back up, how are you then maintaining that, right? What measures, what actions, what controls, what rules are you trying to put in place to keep that weight off, even though your appetite is now slowly changing? And what are the implications of that? Huge. So 18 minutes in, here's what I wanted to talk about, even though I've kind of talked about some of it and I'm going to revisit. What do GLP-1s do? GLP-1s, like I just said, they reduce your appetite. So they make it a lot easier to eat less food. GLP-1s also reduce food noise, right? From what I have read and researched and understand, scientists don't really understand the mechanism by which GLP-1s are working on the brain, right? Because GLP-1, that's a peptide that's actually made by the human body. And then what basically you're kind of like supplementing. It's a glucagon-like peptide 1, and it's an agonist. So it like supports another peptide that already exists. The biochemistry is like pretty complicated, and I am definitely not a biochemist, but all this to say that this is something your body already makes. And then this is kind of like extra that supports it. And it's made and acts kind of in the gut, but it's somehow also acting on the brain. This is why people are noticing changes to alcohol consumption and gambling and shopping. And in general, there's been a lot of in the media written about like how it impacts overall pleasure, that some people are experiencing a loss of pleasure and enjoyment of everything, not just food. What are the implications of that for people? And some people have none of those side effects, right? But GLP-1s decrease your food noise and they decrease your appetite. So you eat less. That's how you're losing weight. So for some people, it makes it easier to choose the foods that you want to eat rather than food kind of constantly like talking to you, right? So if you have like, if you are someone who's really struggled with food noise and you're on a GLP-1 and now you just kind of like eat a meal and you're done and you're not thinking about food, you're just going to eat way less than you were eating before and you're going to lose weight, right? It's very simple from kind of like a mechanistic standpoint. So that is what GLP-1s do. They reduce food noise and they reduce your appetite. Those things overlap in some ways and not in others. As a result, you eat less food. As a result of that, you lose weight. That's what's happening here. Here's what GLP-1s don't do, right? This is factually speaking. GLP-1s don't automatically make you like how your body looks because you lost weight. You have no control over how or where your body loses fat and what your body is going to look like after that. There's been lots of stuff out there in the media, and I have talked to friends and family about this, about what happens when you lose large amounts of weight, how it changes your appearance, right? A lot of people will be like, oh my God, I look older because I have less fat in my face. My eyes are hollowed out. I have a lot more lines. My cheeks are sagging. My skin is sagging. So you go from one, perceived and in some cases real problems to another. And this kind of circles back to all the work I do as a body image coach. Just because you lose weight doesn't mean you automatically like how your body looks, right? People will always say to me, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up my arm and I'm like flapping the bottom of my arm. I don't think I've ever met a single woman in my life who hasn't been like, oh, I just want to get rid of this. I want to lose this. You can't control that. When you lose weight, you might lose some body fat here, but guess what? You're still going to have loose skin. And unless you're strength training, that muscle's not going to be toned. And even if it is toned, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to have, and I hate even saying this, Michelle Obama arms, right? There's a lot of genetics at play there. So just because you've lost weight, a GLP-1 doesn't inherently make you like how your body looks. A GLP-1 reduces food noise, reduces your appetite. That's what it does. You in turn eat less, and the outcome of that is weight loss, okay? GLP-1s don't make you stop thinking about foods as good and bad. Every client that I have worked with who has simultaneously been on a GLP-1 has continued to struggle with this, has continued to deal with guilt and shame around eating certain foods, even if they're eating less, right? Because the food noise piece is in effect. So yes, they're not thinking about it as much, but when they have an ice cream cone or chips or whatever it is, there's still guilt and shame. There's still like, oh my God, am I going to gain weight from eating this? Should I just not be eating this at all because I'm on a GLP-1? Should I try and go as hardcore as possible and not eat any of this? GLP-1 doesn't treat that. A GLP-1 doesn't make you less obsessed with the scale. I have actually seen anecdotally it make people more obsessed with the scale, because you know that this drug is designed, its intent is to make you lose weight. So maybe even more so than a restrictive diet, you're like, I'm on a medication. I am injecting myself with something once a week. I better fucking be losing weight. How much weight did I lose this week? I lost 3 pounds. I lost 4 pounds. I lost 1 pound. It went up. It went down. It didn't like scale obsession. And some people, the GLP-1s can make the scale obsession worse. And some people, it can create a scale obsession where there wasn't one. But certainly if you had a scale fixation prior, being on a GLP-1 is not going to do anything to help it. That is not going to change. That is work that you are going to need to do. Because of what I said before, right? This concept of, well, I'm on a medication now. This should be working. What are the outcomes of this? How much weight did I lose? And then let's say you lose it and you get to a point, am I maintaining it? Well, what happens if I have a bag of chips? What happens if I have a cookie? What happens if I have this? There's a lot of complexity to this. And any doctor worth their salt will tell you, and my favorite resource for this, and I've said this before, is Dr. Carl Nadolsky. He is an obesity medicine specialist. He shares a lot on Instagram. He has a company called Vineyard. It's actually a telehealth company that prescribes GLP-1s, not compounded, prescription only, and they have coaches on staff that support people, and they are looking at you as a whole person. So there's a lot of telehealth companies out there that you can get GLP-1s from. Almost none of them are going to give you the name brand. Almost all of them are going to be compounded. I actually think Roe, the one that, is it Serena or Venus Williams? Now I'm forgetting. One of the Williams sisters is promoting. I think they have just recently are now prescribing Wegovy, not Zepbound. I think Wegovy. Different medications, similar but different. So again, GLP-1s don't make you less obsessed with the scale. GLP-1s don't change the way you talk to yourself about how you look. Again, we all live under this guise that when I lose weight, when I am smaller, I will automatically be happier. That is not true. It's not 100% untrue. I could get like really philosophical here. I won't. Yes, being in a smaller body can absolutely make you happier for a couple of reasons. One, because society tells you that being in a smaller body is better. So if you are in the state of the thing that you were told is better, you will feel happier about it because you belong, because you fit in, because you are doing the thing that you are told is right and good. You might feel better because you feel better, because you were carrying a lot of extra body weight and it didn't feel good, and you feel better at a smaller weight, right? It's impacted your mobility, or your joints, or, the way you can move. Like, there's a lot of impacts. There's a lot of physical impacts and mental impacts, right? If you're feeling limited because of your body size and shape, and you don't have the freedom or flexibility to live your life the way you want to, 1,000% yes, you're going to feel better, right? There's a lot of things that coexist here. It's not nice and neat. It's not black and white. That's why it's been so hard to talk about. But they are, I kind of lost my point here, but they are not going to change the way you talk to yourself about how you look. It kind of goes hand in hand with, losing weight doesn't make you automatically like how your body looks, right? So GLP-1s are not going to make you look in the mirror and be like, damn, girl, you look hot today. Your legs are sexy as fuck. Like, who gives a shit about that cellulite, those stretch marks, those lines on your face, your yellow teeth? Fuck it all. You look awesome. If that's what happens to you, please call me and tell me how you did it, because you are a fucking unicorn, right? Every client that I have worked with on a GLP-1 has continued to struggle with body image issues, and all of them have lost significant amounts of weight relative to them. My client who came on, Nicole, who did the interview with me back in September, has lost between around 65-ish pounds. It's a large percentage of her body weight. She struggled with obesity for almost her entire life, like since her teen years. She's in her 40s. We have conversations about how she feels about the way her body looks every single time we talk. It is ongoing work that is challenging, that she is showing up and putting a lot into. I have clients who've lost much smaller amounts of weight, both in an absolute number, but also in a percentage, so relative to their body. Same thing, right? In like the 15-pound range, where it's the same thing, right? Yes, I'm smaller. Yes, I fit into older clothes. Yes, I like the number on the scale better, but I don't like how my stomach looks. I don't like how my legs look. I don't like how this jiggles. I don't like how this moves, right? It doesn't change any of that stuff. So there's this perception out there that GLP-1s just fix everything, and they don't. And they also need to be used in conjunction with, and that's really what I'm saying here, other aspects of you taking care of both your physical and your mental health, right? So what are you eating while you're on this? How are you exercising? How are you moving? And then how are you handling all of the mindset work, all of the mental work around the experience of losing weight, the experience of your appetite changing, the experience of being on one of these medications, and what it feels like, again, to have your body go through these changes, and like, what does that bring up for you? So they do some work. They don't do all of the work or anywhere even close to it. And again, this is me factually speaking. You might be listening to this thinking like, and I think that's part of being truthful. My hesitation is people are going to be like, oh, she's defensive because like she wants people to pick her over a GLP-1. Like, no. Again, I'm never going to be the person who's advising you whether to do coaching or GLP-1. If you're considering a GLP-1, you should be doing both, right? Like, to me, like, they go hand in hand, for all the reasons I just said. But would I be lying to you if I wasn't basically 100% sure that GLP-1s have had a negative impact on my business? Yeah, I would be. There's no way they haven't, because there are many, many people out there who are opting to do that and think they don't need to do everything else. I'm take the GLP-1. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to lose the weight. Done. I'm good. I don't need to do anything else. It doesn't matter that like I still kind of hate how I look. It doesn't matter that like I still would love to lose another 5 pounds. It doesn't matter that, you know, when I look at myself in the mirror, I still feel disgusted. It doesn't matter that every time I go out for pizza and I have a few extra bites, I'm worried like if I'm going to lose enough on the scale. It doesn't matter that when I get on the scale for the week, I'm so freaking out about like, am I going to lose half a pound? Am I going to lose a pound? Did I maintain? Was it up? Everyone wants to ignore that shit because they lost the weight and they're in the smaller body. And that feels like they've done the thing. Except I would argue that you've done part of some kind of a thing maybe. But you are still in a really tough place and you are still suffering. And it's not that you're looking to like live obviously this perfect life, but I think people see them as an either or. I'm going to do coaching or I'm going to take a GLP-1. And for a lot of people, maybe it's both, right? So that's what I wanted to share. I'm going to talk about this more. This got actually way longer than I expected it to. This is not a one-shot deal. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Very rarely do people actually reach out to me after listening to a podcast, but, like I said, if you follow me on email or social media, I talked the last couple of weeks about like letting it rip, that I've been holding back and I've been caveating things and watering things down for fear of alienating people or hurting people's feelings. And certainly I'm not trying to overtly hurt anyone's feelings, obviously. But if I'm not speaking from my expertise and my truth as a coach and my lived experiences and my experiences of coaching all the women that I've coached, I'm not helping you. I'm not helping me. I'm not doing anything for anyone. I'm just creating noise. So this is my, take one of something that I'm continue to talk about because GLP-1s are not going anywhere. And we need to be having conversations so that if you are someone who's considering one, you are incorporating all the information that you need to make a decision for yourself. And you have resources in which to do that. And if I'm one of them, great. Or you need resources, reach out to me and I can direct you to places. Again, Dr. Carl Nadolsky at the top of your list. If you are thinking about a GLP-1 or you on a GLP-1 and you are not following him, go do that immediately. That's your first thing to do. And I have a lot of experience coaching women on GLP-1s over many years, from all different backgrounds and all different body sizes. So I am speaking from a lot of experience and, that's it. That's what I wanted to share. I'm gonna be back next week. We'll see with what. Thank you guys for being here. Always, always, always. I appreciate you and I'll see you soon.